Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Crimson Crossover podcast presented by Field of 68 and J&J Apparel. I'm your host, Christian Sykes, joined as always by Charles Branch and Joey Blackwell. How you guys doing today?
Doing good. Excited for Christmas if you can't tell.
Fine, just feeling so great to finally get a win over our biggest rival. It was a long time coming. Glad to actually have a game back in Tuscaloosa. It's weird knowing that we have another one here in a few days, since we went a month off without playing a game in Coleman Coliseum. So, with this stretch of games coming up, as we'll get into, hopefully, team will continue to get more in a rhythm. Competition level will go down, and this will be a great opportunity for the guys to show some of that mental toughness and maturity and approaching these games the right way and hopefully taking care of business like we expect them to.
Absolutely. And it was a game where you saw Chris Youngblood come back for or not come back, but come in for the first time this season. He played 15 minutes. You also saw Alabama unveil a new or throwback jerseys back to the what was that, Irwin Dudley days, to really.
Irwin, Rod Grizard, Antoine Pet, like that, my childhood guys, was really happy to see those come out. And I think it was really cool for anybody who saw the video from the basketball account that Irwin Dudley was the one to tell the guys about those jerseys.
Absolutely. And for those of you that don't follow me on Twitter, follow the Twitter account, we are doing a giveaway for those jerseys. So all you have to do is follow Crimson Crossover on Twitter, follow Athletes Thread, and then retweet the post to be entered for a chance to win. I think the winners are chosen on the 19th. So be sure to do that. Also, if you want to buy a jersey for Christmas, you can use code Crimson Crossover on Athletes Thread to get 10% off on your purchase. So be sure to do that as well. But no, I mean that game, it felt like it was almost a month of us waiting for a game to come back because it'd been so long. It'd been 10 days since we had played previously against North Carolina. Um, you saw LeBaron Filan do what LeBaron Filan does, which is not shoot the ball well from three, but get to the rim, be effective, had 16 points, was really effective defensively. I think Mark Sears had his best game of the season, scoring 27 points. And then Darian Reed was another guy that I was really impressed with, at least offensively, what he was bringing. I think it was 6 of 10 from the floor, missed a couple of 3-point shots, but was super effective defensively. And he's continuing to improve every day that he's out there. So very encouraging things to see against a Creighton team that was a little undermanned, but nonetheless a good team. What were your thoughts on the games?
I think this is a team that's still they're still adjusting to the injuries that they have on their roster, and that's going to take a bit. Bama definitely caught them on when they're on their back foot. But I think this is a team that will ultimately be able to salvage what they have. This is a really, really solid team that's still just trying to figure things out right now. Um, Overall, as far as reflecting on Alabama itself, uh, turnover numbers, still not great, but they are good. I was happy to see. I think I said this on the space. I was happy to see that while Creighton only turned over the ball 9 times, Alabama was able to make the most of it with 16 points. That's something that they're going to have to do, especially if they continue to be as sloppy with the basketball as they've been, as Alabama's been so far. You got to maximize the turnovers that the other team commits. I really have liked the past couple of games how Alabama has been off the glass, and that's shown here. We're starting to see more and more rebounds on the defensive end of the court, which is something that we talked about earlier as something that they struggle with over the first 4 or 5 games. We're starting to kind of see that come to fruition. I think guys are finally starting to figure out their roles, which is something that we've had issues with. That will still be a work in progress as Youngblood is implemented back into the roster. But overall, I really was encouraged. Sears had a great game. I think might be a little bit too early to say he's back, but the past couple of games have really shown that he's finally getting into the swing of things and starting to be the player that we all knew he was heading into this season. Phylon, as you said, great game. Nelson was disappointing on the offensive end of the floor, but and in my personal opinion, he made up for it on the defensive end. I would have liked to have seen him, maybe commit a couple more blocks or a couple more steals, but overall on the off the glass, 10 rebounds, you can't really get mad about that. He was a game changer on that end. So, it's hard to talk too bad about a game where you were only trailing for 1 minute and 21 seconds. I did, and I'm sure Charles will go over this in a second. I did was a little bit frustrated in the final 5 minutes of the first half, especially with the lead they were able to build up, and then once again, like clockwork, around the 7 or 6 minute mark in the second half, once the game was seemingly had a comfortable lead, start to slip again. Eventually, sooner or later, this team will be able to figure that out, I think. But right now, that is something that they really, really need to hammer home, especially in these next few games are good practice for that, but they really need to have this figured out before they play Oklahoma. I shudder to think of if they can't get this effort issue figured, not effort, if this comfortability. They play too comfortable when they get too high, and they get a little bit lackadaisical. As I was going to say, I shudder to think of if they can't get that figured out and get that problem solved before SEC play, when some teams will come pop them in the mouth if they can't get that under control.
I was really encouraged by the defensive effort for most of the game. There were definitely some times where we got a little bit lost and, Kalkbrenner got an easy layup or an easy dunk. Give credit to Creighton and specifically number 23, Jackson McAndrew, who got hot late from the 3-point line and kind of kept it where you're still fighting basically to the end. But from a defensive standpoint, I thought we got in to Stephen Ashworth pretty well. He had 20 points, but 80 of those are coming from the free throw line. He was 8 of 8. He doesn't miss from the free throw line. He was 2 of 8 from the 3-point line. He did have 9 assists, but he had 4 turnovers. And he's the guy, between him and Kalkbrenner, those are the two guys they really have to lean on. And I thought that, we continue to throw bodies at Ashworth. I thought for the most part, whether it was Cliff or Aiden or Grant, we doubled Kalkbrenner at times, but we never really let him catch the ball or made it easy for him to catch the ball. I felt like for most of the game, there were times where they were trying to make an entry pass and they did throw it out of bounds. So I liked the ball pressure and also liked the pressure that we put on him as far as how he may be trying to receive the pass on the block. Offensively for this team, it gets talked about a lot, with Nate Oates and 3-point shooting and live and die by the three. And there are some people that will give credit that it's 3-point shooting, layups, and free throws. And I think with this team and where we are right now, this has got to be a team that attacks the paint consistently. It's got to be the number one option. And I know it is because typically when we want a 3-point shot, it's coming off of a paint touch and being kicked back out. But just looking at some of our numbers from shooting 2, so shooting right at the rim or close to the rim, we're shooting about 60%, which of course is very efficient down there. And when I think about where, it got a little concerning there in the first half, we were up 27-10. We fouled Ashworth on a 3-point shot with about 8.5 minutes left in the first half. But it was kind of just going back and forth. And then you get to the 4:30 mark, basically, in the first half, where we're up 33-18. And every single offensive possession that we had, the first shot that we took was a 3-point shot. And we ended up going 0-7 from 3 to finish the half. We did get a couple offensive rebounds. We only were able to convert one of those offensive rebounds into points. Grant Nelson got fouled twice, went to the free throw line, went 2 of 3. He missed the front end on a one-on-one with less than a minute left. We got the ball back. I think after Creighton cut it 37-31, and Sears, was not a good possession. Coach Oates said it was not a good possession on the radio broadcast. But it's moments like that where we seem just to rely on shooting 3-point shots to get it all back, or we just kind of lose what's been successful for us as far as attacking the rim. The reason why I think Mark Sears is playing so much better, and you saw it in the North Carolina game, is he attacked the paint and he got to the rim early. And he did the same thing against Creighton early and then ended up shooting 4 of 7 from the 3-point line and wasn't shooting as deep as well. I think this team has just got to continue to attack the paint. We've got guys that can handle the ball. We've got guys that can finish at the rim. So I would like to see us just continue to press the issue down low because that's going to make teams collapse more on us. I don't expect to see a team defend us like a Florida did or a Kentucky did last year, where they're basically going to give up the drive one-on-one and never come off of a shooter. The more success that we can continue to have driving the paint and finishing at the rim is going to pull those guys that are covering our wing guys. Maybe it's like somebody who's guarding a Stevenson, a Reed, whoever it may be. That's one more step they've got to take to the paint, that if we do kick it out, that they got to recover and get back. So that's more time for our shooter to catch, be relaxed, and make the shot. And hopefully with these games that we have coming up, we can get a little bit more of a rhythm in that too, as far as, having a game where we shoot a 35 or a 40% from three on a high volume where we get 30, 35 attempts, something like that. So overall, you cannot be upset with beating Creighton, a Big East team that's going to be a boost to your resume. But it's just those moments where you got a team at home, you're up 15 in the first half. In my opinion, that's winning time. That's an opportunity to go ahead and put them away. And it doesn't mean you can come out lackadaisical in the second half, but you can go ahead and push that lead back up to 17, 18, 20 points, and then go do the same thing to them early in the second half. And we just haven't done that enough this year to my liking. I'm sure to the team's liking as well. And that's something I hope that, if we get those opportunities, we take advantage of over these next couple games.
Something that I kind of proposed, maybe I said it in our group chat, I can't remember. It feels like this team needs to learn how to blow teams out, right? Like it doesn't feel like this team, there's a lack of talent. It doesn't feel like there's a lack of focus or lack of effort, because I really do feel like this team gives a lot of effort. They're pretty focused. It just, every single time that there's an opportunity, like you said, to go win the game, not necessarily win the game at the end of the game, but win the game early on, put a team, like hit that knockout punch. It just feels like the offense, for whatever reason, some just stops working. And I'm not entirely sure why. I think in this game specifically, the offense stopped working when LeBaron Filan got his second foul. And I think that at that point we were up like 17. And after that, it really did show the lack of ball handlers and understanding of running the offense, coming out of that. Because what Creighton did was just key on Mark Sears, try to prevent him from getting the ball and force other people to take shots. Aiden Terrell went, I think, like, what did he go, like 1 of 10 or something like that?
You 1 of 9.
1 of 9.
Yeah.
3 of those were bunny putbacks that he missed on one possession. So I don't really fault him for, I mean, obviously you want your almost 7-foot center to make a bunny, but that stat's a little inflated. Grant Nelson went 1 of 6. But when you're going up against a quality big like Kalkbrenner, then like you can't expect your guys to just go to work like that. Like, you don't, as much as Cliff Amori is good, he's not Janai Broom, right? And I'll give credit to Janai Broom. Like, he's a good player. He's a good center, probably the best in the country this year. And you don't have a guy like that on this team, as far as the physicality and being able to go to work like that. Which brings me to my second point that I wanted to talk to you guys about. A lot of the media and just the commentary that I've seen on Twitter and on YouTube is asking whether or not they should be out on this Alabama team. And I'm kind of confused on that, because they're 8-2, ranked 6th in the country, with their only losses to Oregon, who's ranked like 12th, and Purdue, who's 21. when we face Purdue or on the road. Um, Maybe you guys could give me a little bit better understanding as to why people are kind of saying that about this Alabama team.
It probably comes with the new blood territory. You know, you see these other teams that, well, there's multiple factors, but one of them is because it's the new blood. I think if you had a Duke team or a Kentucky team or a North Carolina team and they were 8-2 and having some close, I think the narrative would be more around let's just wait and see, let's just this team will get things figured out. They're going to be all right, which is what we're talking about with the team we have right now. Um, but with a new blood, it's while they made the Final Four last year, I think overall on the national stage, Alabama isn't still as, I mean, obviously they're not as proven as some of those other massive programs are. But I think as Alabama continues to have the success that they've been having and continues to be more mainstream, I think we'll slowly over time see those narratives start to shift. And another part, and I know we talked about this, a little while ago. It's also because Alabama just hasn't been annihilating teams left and right. They haven't been doing what Auburn's been able to do consistently. Tennessee has had some close games, but they've also had some pretty big blowout wins. A lot of teams that are pretty much every team that's higher than Alabama in the rankings right now. But I think that's definitely a factor in that as well. Fortunately, these next few games, I think, will maybe calm some people down. People that have thrown their hands up in the air on this team. That being said, these next few opponents, it's not like you're, it's not like you're playing in, three top 25 teams in a row, but you are still, getting those what will hopefully be easy dubs. With one of them being on the road, and that'll help quiet people down before we head into a tough SEC schedule. But this Alabama team has almost always been a team that proves themselves in conference play. Yes, they can make a statement early, and we've seen that under Oates. Usually like a 1 or 2 game statement, but you don't see them make a statement over the course of the entire non-conference schedule. Kind of like what Auburn has done this year. I know we keep talking about Auburn, but a lot of Alabama fans follow Auburn. They know they watch too. Auburn makes that statement over the course of the entire non-conference. Bama makes it in games, but Bama typically makes it over the course of conference play, which has yet to start. So I think that if Alabama continues to go 8-2 over its next 10 games, I think that narrative has to change. This is a really solid team. Bama has some really tough opponents coming up, and it's disappointing to see that right now. But as we've said 1,000 times on this podcast, it's not even New Year's yet. We still have a long way to go for these things to change.
So, one, I still blame that we had to play Purdue on Peacock and nobody saw it. Auburn's playing out Maui and has 3 games on ESPN, so you're getting more eyeballs on their program. They obviously had the game in Holiday Hoops Giving against Ohio State this weekend, also on ESPN. Tennessee and Illinois played a great game on Fox as well. We have a big game against Creighton. It's on the SEC network, which great for us, but probably should have been, in my opinion, a game that's on a national network as well that everybody should have been able to see. So combination of, I think, with some of our games just hasn't had the national exposure that you think it would. When you think about our game against Houston, it's on TNT, TBS, whatever it was for the Players era, brand new tournament. And I know there's been articles about how, the multi-team events will probably be changing in the future. But still, I think a lot of people for Feast Week are going to be turning into ESPN and ESPN2 to watch those games and maybe not be familiar enough yet that TBS, TNT had some pretty good basketball for the Players era tournament. So I think some of it is exposure. I do think some of it, as y'all talked about, as far as Auburn has had games, whether it's against Kent State, whether it's been against Vermont, whether it's been against, I don't know who else they've played at home.
Richmond.
Richmond, thank you, that they blew out. Again, give credit to them. They did blow out Ohio State in a neutral site in Atlanta. For us, that could have been the Illinois game where we had opportunities multiple times to win that game by probably 20 plus points, and give credit to Illinois. They made shots. Will Riley and Jakunis and some of those guys kept them in it. And we just don't have that we don't have that margin of result that maybe some of the other teams in the SEC have right now. I think some of it too is there wasn't really a whole lot of room for Alabama to show great improvement as far as you look at just rankings to start the year. You can't get much higher than number two in the country. Kansas has obviously lost a couple of games. Duke has lost a couple of games, one of those being to an SEC opponent in Kentucky. Anytime Kentucky's going to get any traction, that's going to get talked about by the national media, especially with the transition that you had there from John Calipari going out to another SEC program, and you got a returning son and Mark Pope coming into the program. So I understand them getting a lot of the exposure. I understand them getting a lot of the hype, and give credit to Auburn and Tennessee with how they've played too. But as I look at our schedule, all the top 25 teams that we have played, whether they're current top 25 teams or started as top 25 teams, like we've talked about it, we've played a daunting schedule. I don't have the Ken Palm numbers up in front of me as far as what that non-conference schedule ranks and
Fourth.
efficiency fourth. So, there you go. We've played a tough schedule, and you're not going to get, huge blowout wins in games like that. Why do people love March Madness? It's because of the close, intense games. Well, we basically just had a March Madness run with the opponent, with the 6, 7 games that we had and the opponents that we played that are probably going to be in a tournament like that. So I think it's that, and I do think some of it was just how the team performed against Arkansas State and McNeese State, and both of those games being closer than what you probably expected. Give credit to both of those programs, give credit to both of those coaches who have played against Nate Oates or coached with Nate Oates for several years. And I think that's why we look at this stretch right now is, there's an opportunity to, I wouldn't say right any wrongs, but maybe change the narrative a little bit as far as, this team can take care of business. They aren't going to play to their competition. They can go out and win these games comfortably, and move on to the next game. Last year's team, there was talked a lot about how they could take care of that lower competition, but when they would play bigger competition or power conferences outside the SEC, just couldn't get over the hump. Well, as we saw as we got to the tournament, that wasn't the case. Took care of business against North Carolina, took care of business against Clemson, played Connecticut very, very well throughout, the first half and much of the second half as well. So it's all, as we know with basketball, it's all about building and playing your best basketball when you get to the end of February, when you get into March, and hopefully you get into the 1st of April as well. So I understand some of it. Is it extreme? Absolutely. I don't think there's a reason to be out on this team. But as we have now seen, the SEC is going to be very tough. We could finish 5th, 6th in the conference, and that doesn't mean this is a bad basketball team, especially with how tiebreakers go and things like that. So we need to focus on ourselves as much as we can, and take care of the business that's in front of us.
And I'll say this in regards to the SEC. I mean, there's conversation, and I don't think it'll end up happening. There's conversation right now where the SEC's going to get 12 teams into the NCAA tournament, which would be a record. I I was I forget who I was listening to. I was listening to someone, and I was listening to the Field of 68 After Dark, because they talked about Alabama, and I just wanted to hear what they were saying. The SEC's not a conference this year where you can go, oh, I blew out this team, so we're going to be good and we can cruise to the next game and we're going to win the next game. Or it's not a conference this year where, oh, I lost the game, now I'm going to sulk and not play bad or and play poorly the next game, because you're going to get beat. You're going to get beat because of the quality of teams that are in the SEC this year. You have to be able to take every game, whether win or lose, throw it in the trash the next game for the next game, because you can't dwell on the past. You have to look forward. Otherwise, you will potentially go on a losing streak in this league with the opponents that we have. Alabama, and I was looking at the schedule. Do you guys realize that Alabama closes at Auburn, or no, at Tennessee, at home versus Florida, and then at Auburn?
Yeah, I realized that a couple of weeks ago.
I'd even push it, 4 games before that too, where you have the game Saturday at home against Auburn. Then you go to Missouri. We just saw what Missouri did to Kansas at home. Then you come back at home and play Kentucky. Then you play Mississippi State at home. Um, it's I thought that the first 9 games that we had would be beneficial for us. And then as I look at the schedule, as of right now, 4 of our first 5 games to start conference play are against ranked opponents. There's nowhere to hide in the SEC this year. There's no 3, 4 game stretch that you probably can feel comfortable about right now until you see, can teams sustain it, or is there a major injury for somebody, or like you just said, somebody's not able to flush a bad game and it just starts snowballing from there. And I think going back to this stretch and kind of what I talked about a little bit earlier, as far as just that mental toughness and maturity, I really would like to see from this team approach these next 3 games and be ready to play from the start, because you're going to have to do that every conference game this year with the opponents that we're about to play.
That's a perfect segue. So, Charles, I think for the previews, let's just quickly run through all three and just kind of talk about the stretch.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the North Dakota game specifically after we run through all the previews of the three.
I want to start North Dakota with the question to both of y'all. Do you happen to know the most famous basketball alumni for North Dakota? And this is a famous basketball alumni. He's had an NBA career. I'm curious if y'all happen to know who can call themselves an alumnus from North Dakota.
Can't say I do.
I have no clue.
Phil Jackson.
Really?
Mm,
Phil
okay.
Jackson used to play for them. And North Dakota has been a very good Division II basketball program, but made the leap to Division I. I think it was in the 2009-2010 season. Um, I've got to think, if you're a North Dakota fan, like uh, this has got to be really exciting for you to see a team like Alabama come up and play against your team. They've never had a power conference opponent play at home, never had a ranked opponent play at home. It's only the second time they've ever played an SEC opponent. The other time was in 2018, where they played at Kentucky and lost 96-58. Capacity for their arena is 3,300. I imagine there will be somebody in every seat. If you want to get into the game, it costs $150 on StubHub right now. So I've got to imagine this is a very exciting time for them. If you can brave the elements, I think the high on Wednesday is 6 degrees and the low is 4 degrees. So at least there's not a whole lot of variable in between that, I guess. Um, but just looking at their team real quick, they just had a home and home against Texas San Antonio, coached by Jason Claunch, former Alabama assistant. They lost both those games. They lost at UTSA 80-76, and then lost at home 95-85. So may have some familiarity with the system or what we're trying to do. But a guy that I think about for them, we did this game for Grant Nelson, and I think it's awesome to be able to do this, especially this time of year, where you're not going to have huge home crowds in Tuscaloosa because of students being out. But the guy who leads North Dakota's program right now and this team is a guy named Trayson Eaglestaff, and he's from Bismarck, North Dakota. Averages 18 points a game. He's shooting about 37% from three. I think a guy like him, they got some other guys that average 11 points a game, but I got to think this is really exciting for him to be able to represent his state, represent his program in a game like this. So not a whole lot to say about North Dakota. Not a great record. Defensively in KenPom, they're ranked 345th, and that's 3 out of 364 teams. So a game that we should be able to control start to finish. But I do just want to say I think this is really cool that Coach Oates has done this, not only for Grant, but I'm hoping for future players that come to Alabama, that in a New York and different places like that, to take this program on the road and even give some of these smaller programs these opportunities to showcase themselves on on home courts. So after we get back and thaw out from being in North Dakota, we got Kent State on Sunday at home. Kent State has played at Auburn early in the year, lost 79-56. Also played Kennesaw State this year, and they did win that game 67-60. This is a revenge game for me. I think it'd be really cool if we brought out the new red crimson jerseys again, and take care of business for that 2002, 2003 team that lost to Kent State and Antonio Gates when we were number 2 seed. That was Rogers Ard, Mo Williams, Irwin Dudley, all those guys. Um, Kent State is going to be led by their defense. They've actually got a pretty good defense, I think, for their standards. 63rd in Ken Palm. So it's a game that getting close to Christmas. Not sure what the crowd size is going to be like. Can you come out focused, and can you come out and just take care of business, run your stuff, and know that you're the more talented team, and hopefully take care of business? And this is a comfortable win for us as well. And then South Dakota State will be after Christmas, again on a Sunday, December 29th. We've actually played South Dakota State several times over the past few years. It's a team that's actually put some talent, whether it's guys that graduated and finished as Jackrabbits, or like a Baylor Shireman who ended up going to, was it Creighton that Shireman was at for a couple
Yeah.
years?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. But they're led by a guy named Oscar Clough. He's from Queensland, averages 16 points a game, 10 rebounds a game. Really good opportunity for us to continue to get tested down low. So Cliff, Aiden, Grant, seeing how, it'd be interesting to see how we play somebody like that, as far as do we try to double them and force them into some turnovers. He is a guy that averages 2 turnovers a game. Or do we see, can we handle a one-on-one matchup with some of those guys and make sure that we don't get lost in a defensive switch or anything like that if we do try to double somebody? So I don't want to take any of these opponents lightly, but these are games that you should win. You should win comfortably, and these should be games that instill more confidence into this team and instill more confidence into this fan base as you turn the calendar and get into SEC play and Oklahoma come to Tuscaloosa soon after that.
So I'll start with the North Dakota game. I marked this game and or circled this game this entire season, or even in the preseason when we talked about this, as the game I was most excited for, mainly because of the Grant Nelson going back home to play, in front of his family, in front of his, and I guarantee you that he probably has like 50 or so requests for tickets to this game. Additionally, I think that this game's a crucial game because it's the first one after this daunting 7 game and realistically, I would say it's a 9 game stretch that was daunting because Arkansas State came back and beat UAB by they were down by 27, came back and won. I believe McNeese recently just beat Memphis. So it's not like the teams that we're playing are, or that we've played this far outside of UNA or UNC Asheville, are bad teams at all. Like these 9 games that we've had have been really, really tough opponents. And so I'm excited to see one, the continuity to kind of get gel together. Because I think that there's been so many revolving pieces with Millette coming in, Youngblood coming in, Reitzel coming out, Grant coming off injury, all of the Reed coming off injury, like all of these different things that have happened early in the season where you haven't seen a continuous lineup thus far. So I'm excited to see this game. On top of that, I really just want to blow out a team. I really do. And that's not me taking North Dakota lightly or any of these teams lightly, because any team can lose on a given night. But I really just want to see this team get up 20 and win a game by 20. I don't want to see it come back down to 5 points and then we're scraping out an 8 point, 9 point win like we've seen for every game besides North Carolina. And the only reason that North Carolina wasn't a close game is because North Carolina only made three pointers. Joey, what are your thoughts on these upcoming games?
Well, with North Dakota, I think this is kind of, we've talked several times tonight about how, um, this team needs to get more confidence on the offensive end of the floor. They need to have a game where they absolutely dominate somebody on both ends of the floor, and this is kind of a perfect opponent to do it. First thing you need to know about North Dakota is that they're not pretty, they're a very streaky team. Um, it's rare that they have. I've actually went back and looked at a lot of box scores. It's rare that they have a night where they have multiple players that have good nights on the same night. Um, they lack consistency. I think they're shooting 45% from the floor on the year, and they're about 28% on the floor from beyond the arc on the year. So there's not really a single player on the whole roster that you probably really consider a 3-point specialist. On top of that, they don't really have a dominant big on their roster. They are a relatively tall team. I think they average around 6'6", but their usual, I guess you'd say center is Amar. I think is it Kuljahovic? Kuljahovic. I don't really know how to say that last name.
Well, let
But
you say it,
he's
not me.
but he's probably their best center, and he's 6'9". So they don't really have a big threat. So overall, this presents a really good opportunity for Alabama to go out there and get that double digit win that they need right now. Because even if it is against a team like North Dakota, it's a way to give these guys confidence moving forward and to maybe get some more attention on them. The problem, though, I am a little worried. Is looking at the size of the arena. We all know how Alabama shoots in arenas with a low ceiling, and I encourage our listeners to go look at. They call it the Sioux Center, the Betty Ingolstadt Arena. It's actually a really cool arena. I would love to watch a game there just because of the intimate atmosphere that they have there. But Alabama over the past few years does not do well with low ceiling gyms. But I don't think that's necessarily going to be a problem come Wednesday night.
I do think just looking at, like I said, capacity is about 3,300. I think,
About the same
uh,
size as Auburn, right?
yeah, well, I was gonna go. I was gonna go to Boutwell Auditorium for our exhibition game against Wake Forest, where I think we shot the ball pretty well and played really well in that game. But yes, I was going to mention, first time an Alabama team under Coach Oates went to Auburn, set the record, what was the record at the time for most three-pointers made in a game. And yes, I think the size is probably very comparable to Auburn Arena. So, great, an opportunity for uh, to play in a small arena like that, because you'll have to play in a small arena like that later on in the year too. So a good opportunity, thinking ahead, of course, as always,
Obviously.
you know, getting ready for, Auburn by going to another small arena and having an opportunity to kind of play a game in that setting.
Um, Another question I'll ask, and it's not necessarily for the next couple of games. Are you guys concerned about the 3-point shooting? And I'll preface that before you answer. Alabama's roster, as it's constructed right now, if you look at the what was it, the best career percentages for every player on the team, should be Nate Oates' best 3-point shooting team by percentage. Currently, they're the worst Nate Oates shooting team that he's had at Alabama at 31.8%. I think they're ranked 234th in KenPom on as far as 3-point shooting. It's 10 games in. Are you concerned about the 3-point shooting as it stands right now?
Joe, you want to go first?
Um, yeah, you can go ahead, Charles.
Um, I do have concerns, but I also, when I look at the numbers for our three-point shooters, like Mark Sears is shooting 31%. I got to think Mark by the end of the year is going to get to a minimum 35, 36%, and he's going to be the guy taking a lot of those three-point shots. We know about Jaron Stevens' struggles. He's now shooting 24%. Jaron at minimum should be a guy that can hit, 30 to 33% of his three-point attempts. Aiden Holloway shooting about 35% right now. I think if that holds steady for him, the team can win off of that. Chris Youngblood, his first game, he goes 1 of 5, so he's shooting 20%. Houston Millette is currently
Still
shooting
100%. He did take a
100.
shot.
He's still 2 of 2. Sorry, I
Yeah.
couldn't remember if he missed one in the game against Creighton. So yeah, I mean, if Houston's going to make every three then for the rest of the year, then I would expect the team percentage to keep going up. But I mean, both of those guys should be guys that can fall within the 35-40% range. So I think it's reasonable to have concern, but I think some of it can be easily fixed as far as guys just taking a deep breath, us being better passing the ball out from the paint or kicking it to the corner or wherever it may be. The right guys taking the right shots, and just seeing a couple go down. And I do think that starts with the right guy or right guys taking 3-point shots early, than just guys throwing up threes because that's what the offense is considered to be. Um, Look, I think if Mark Sears gets hot, it's going to infiltrate the rest of the team, and you'll start seeing other guys shoot the ball well. So I know that's kind of a non-committal answer, but I think it's understandable to have some concern as far as, is this team going to be a team that can get to a 34-35% from the 3-point line and get the efficiency numbers that you want on that shot.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned Mark Sears, and if he can maybe turn it around. If he has the past couple of games, but overall get his shot down. The reason I say it's kind of funny is that so on the season, Sears is a .318 from 3-point percentage, right? The team itself is a .317, so they're .001 off from being the exact same number. I think that obviously with Wrightsell going out, it is that will take away from your 3-point shot a little bit, and that consistency. He was at the time Alabama's best 3-point shooter statistically. But I think that young blood coming back in, I think it'll take some time for him to get back into the swing of things. But I think once he does, that's going to help. But I'm in agreement with Charles in that I think that the whole team has struggled with the 3-point game the past really the whole season, but particularly the past couple of weeks. I think that this team, once Sears' shot starts falling, it's going to be contagious. I think because seeing shots fall is in a way, it gives you confidence not just in your team, but it gives you confidence in yourself, even if you're not the one making the shot. So I think that once Sears gets things together, we've slowly seen other guys be more implement. I mean, remember how people were talking about Aiden Holloway the first couple of weeks of the season, and look where he is now. He has the green light. Somebody like Phylon, even though we like to see him more so. We like to see him more so in the paint. He has been able to hit a three from time to time. He is, we just need more consistency. I think once this team nails down the consistency, it'll be a little bit better. If to answer your question, am I concerned? I think it's warranted that people have concerns just because of all the expectations that people had for this team heading into the season. The problem with that, though, is that that's just exactly what they were. They were expectations. This team continues to get wins. They're 8-2. They're not winning in the fashion that we would like to see them, but they're still getting the wins. And how many times have I said on this podcast that, or maybe not on the podcast, but in our group, it would be impressive to see what this team could do after like in wins if the shots would actually fall. Like even in the Creighton game, that's a perfect example. This team shot 20% from beyond the arc, and they still beat Creighton by 8 points. They still put up 83 points in a game where they were 6 of 30 from beyond the arc. Once this team's shot starts falling and they start building that confidence, those concerns will probably be thrown out the window, and that's why I'm not really concerned right now. Now, ask me at the end of January how I feel, but right now, as of where it stands, I'm not throwing in the towel just yet on it.
And go ahead, Charles.
What I would, not to change gears too much, but what I would be more concerned about from a shooting perspective with this team has been the free throw shooting. 73% from the free throw line as a team is not awful. Knowing last year's team shot 78, 79%. But Mark Shear's shooting 81% from the free throw line. He was an 85% free throw shooter last year. Grant shooting 73%. He was an 81% free throw shooter. LeBaron shooting 74% right now, and would like to see that number get up into the 80s because I know he's going to continue to get to the rim. And the more you get to the rim, you're going to get fouled. So would like to see him have opportunities to convert and ones, or go 2 of 2 from the free throw line. So, and before Latrell Wrightsell got hurt, he was 100% last year, so he's only 85%. He was only 85% this year. So that was very shocking, just what we got to witness last year. But that's where I feel a little bit more concerned. As far as just it doesn't seem like we've been able enough to be able to, go 2 from 2 from the free throw line, or complete a 3-point play the old-fashioned way by knocking down your free throw.
Going back to the 3-point shooting, what I was going to say is I think the big thing for Alabama is getting the right shooters the ball. You saw Chris Youngblood go 1 of 5. I think 2 of those were like last second shot clock shots that he probably wasn't going to make. They were super contested. He's also coming back from injury, so not really expecting him to immediately come out and shoot 40-something% from three off rip. You'd like to see Houston Millett, who's a 42% 3-point shooter last year, shoot the ball. Obviously, he didn't in the game against Creighton, but you don't really want Aiden Sherrill taking. I think he took like 4 or 5 3-point shots. You don't want Grant Nelson taking 4 3-point shots. Jaron Stevenson, I think he went 0 of 3 from 3. Like these are guys that, like, if you take those, and then Darian Reed, I think, went 0 of 3 as well. You take those shots, distribute them towards Aiden Holloway, Mark Sears, Chris Youngblood, Houston Millett, and you give them those opportunities, the likelihood of them making it increases significantly. And so I think it's just they have to get these guys that can shoot the ball. I also think that there is a issue, at least right now, of Nate taking out guys that are hot. LeBaron Filan went on a tear early in the Creighton game, and he immediately pulled him. You've seen it consistently where they're not really riding the hot hand, and I get it. They're trying to find rotations, they're trying to find subs, they're still trying to figure it out. But going into SEC play, if LeBaron Filan has 7 straight points, you need to leave LeBaron Filan in the game unless he does something that causes you to take him out. You don't need to take out a guy that's 7 straight points. He's playing well. If Mark Sears is going off, you're not going to take Mark Sears out of the game, right? You're not going to. If he gets 10 straight points, you're not going to take him out of the game, and that's what you've been seeing with Nate doing with some of these other guys. Is he's just pulling them. And I don't expect that to be the norm moving forward. I also expect the rotation to shorten a little bit. Not necessarily people being out of the rotation completely, but on a game-by-game basis. You saw Mo Diabate play less minutes. Houston Millett didn't play that many minutes. Just depending on what the game needs with how deep this team is, we're able to kind of adjust how we're playing minutes. And I bet you the guys that are on the team know that too. Like, oh, we're playing a more physical team. Mo Diabate, you're gonna play more minutes than Houston Millett tonight. Or, oh, we need the shooting. Houston Millett, you're gonna play more than Mo Diabate. Like, it's not that big of a deal, but that's just a few things that I've seen that I would like to maybe shore up a little bit going into these next 3 games. Just find our shooting stroke, because I think we're kind of missing it. Also, you shot 20% against Creighton, and at one point you were up 17 while shooting poorly. So, Joey, what you said about I would love to see what this team looks like when they start hitting shots. I mean, you're beating quality teams without being able to shoot. So it's a good point.
It does show that this team can win in a multitude of ways. Last year's team, it was kind of, you knew you were going to have to outscore everybody. I think we got to continue to improve on the defensive side, but we can have games where we can win with our defense. We can have games where we can win with our offense by just getting to the rim. and we can have games where we can win by shooting well from the 3-point line. So a lot more versatility with this team of how they can approach games, kind of like what you said, Christian, as it may come down to lineups and things like that on a case by case basis. But as we know, playing the SEC and how they're typically is a tight whistle in SEC games. You really like that we've got the depth that we have, and guys should be able to feel comfortable stepping in and hopefully not having to play out of position. And that may be a way that we win several games this year, where if it is a foul fest and starters for the other team are having to sit on the bench and their backup guys just aren't to the level of what Coach Oates has built with this roster and with the talent level that these guys do have.
Well, is there anything else I'm missing or we haven't talked about?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty much everything.
All
Wishing
right.
everyone a very Merry Christmas.
Yeah, apparently Joey's the only one that got the Christmas bug. So uh
Apparently,
we definitely didn't set you up, Joey. Definitely not.
not at all.
Um, well, like I said on the at the top, we have the athletes thread thing going on right now, so be sure to check that out. J&J just dropped their Plaid Palace home schedule for basketball crew neck, and I think that they have some deals going on with that being holiday season.
Pretty sick crew neck.
Yeah, that was really nice. As far as our schedule, we'll have a post game space. It'll be a late one because I think the game starts at 9 my time on CBS Sports Network, I believe. So we'll have post game space. We'll have a post game space on Sunday. And then we won't do anything next week for Christmas. That's why we kind of did all three of these. I don't think well, maybe we'll do. I don't know if we'll do a podcast on the 29th. We might just wait until opening SEC play. Does the SEC play start that next week?
It'll start
SEC.
it'll start that Saturday.
So the
Yeah, it starts
follow-
January 4th.
Oh, so then we might have to do a podcast on like the 29th or something after the South Dakota State game. But we'll figure all of that out. But yeah, we'll have a post game space on Sunday and on Wednesday, and then we'll let you guys know what's going on after that. Just wishing everyone a happy holiday, spend time with family. Don't worry about transfer portal stuff. Don't worry about, just enjoy life. Enjoy the college football playoff. I think is this starting this week. Just different things like that. A lot of stuff going on, but yeah, just hope all of you guys have a great holiday. But with that, I guess we're good to